Here on the Safe Haven podcast, any names mentioned should not be considered as suspects unless officially stated as such by law enforcement. Any opinions during interviews on this podcast are the opinions of the interviewee and don't reflect the opinions of the Safe Haven podcast or the AMU cold case team. Everyone is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law.
Then we move on to February 25th. And Westfall spoke to Kathy Grant, who is James Bonnet's sister. And we've talked about them before in this episode or in this podcast, that we were trying to locate, James Bonnet and his sister, Kathy. Kathy supposedly had dated Chris back, during this time as well. And so Kathy was also a bartender at the Sundance Cafe in Dallas. So in the reports, Kathy says that she was not working at the Sundance on the evening of the fire, but her brother, James Bonnet, had worked till close that night. Chris mentioned to Kathy, so Chris Cutright mentioned to Kathy that he had picked up Judy, but was only going as far as Meredith Manor. So that continues to be the same thing. He says that Judy said that she lived before Meredith Manor. So James Bonnet also confirmed that Judy had not been in the bar that evening. So I know we've tossed that around and confirmed this now in the case files that she had not been in the bar. So we can put that theory kind of to rest. James confirms that Chris was in the bar that evening in question, so the 6th. When asked about how the topic of Judy came up, Bonnet tells Westfall that it was because they had seen the news coverage of Judy on the TV. And that's when Chris said that looked like the person he picked up and dropped off at the farm. He also mentioned that Chris was not a drinker or did not drink alcohol, and neither did James. So we know that that's not true based on everything that we've known. It sounds unlikely that Chris was not drinking, that night or the next night. So one of the things that I want to talk more about is that based on the 25th, so when Westfall actually talks to Cutright, Chris already moved out of Tom Sam's house. So basically we have at least 19 days, maybe less, that Chris leaves Sam's house after Judy's disappearance and the fire. So that is interesting to me because we have at least 19 days, but it could have been 10 days. It could have been 12 days. So all of a sudden, Chris ups and moves out of Sam's house. And when asked about this, Chris says that he left Sam's due to thinking that Sam's and his soon-to-be ex-wife were having a relationship. He says that Sam's was telling her information. I found this interesting. You'll love this too, Justin, that him and Sam's had come to some disagreement. So he left. Now I'm wondering what's the disagreement.
Pretty sure it would be the fact he thinks he's having sex with his soon-to-be ex-wife. I would assume that's a pretty big disagreement right there.
Right, but he mentions that though, and then says a disagreement. So it wasn't like he didn't say, I think it was like two things. That's how I read it. Like, yeah, I think that him and my ex-wife are, having a relationship and that, we've just come into some, disagreement. So he left and I'm just kind of, maybe that's right. That could be. But we also know that there was some suspicion of things being stolen and things like that. So right now I'm trying to work on or find out when Chris moved in with Sam's. So, we have, or the 25th, I'm sorry, that he's already moved out. So what's the time frame of, moving in? And again, Bonnet mentions that Chris was not drinking, and that is interesting to me as well. So what do you think about all of this?
Me and you are pretty familiar with some of the inconsistencies and some of the falsehoods that are being said by Bonnet and Cutright and stuff like that. We've brought it up. So
the 19 days is interesting.
That's very interesting because why would he be heading there if he's supposedly, I don't know. My whole thing is like, I'm more curious about when Cutright says that Tom Sams was giving his soon-to-be ex-wife information on him. Like, what kind of information? Because that can mean a lot of different things. And maybe that's one of the reasons he thought they were in a relationship together, But I'd like to hear anybody else's thoughts on that.
The other thing I have an issue with is if Chris knew, and he does based on what James is saying, that Judy was the one he picked up because he saw her on the news on the 7th, right? She's already now on the news on the 7th as a missing person. Why did he not go to the police? The police had to go to him. Now, let's say he says, well, I didn't know if it was really her. It was dark out. I didn't really get a good look. But now we have Bonnet saying the conversation came up because she was on the news and he said, oh, that's the girl that I picked up and dropped off there at the fire.
Yeah.
What's the likelihood?
Well, and Chris Newell said the same thing, though.
Why do you have two people? And he says, well, I didn't know if it was really her. Does it matter? I mean, what's the likelihood that you pick up somebody, you drop them off, and it just happens to be at the place of a fire? I mean, why not just call the police and say, hey, I don't know if this was her or not, or a coincidence, but he did nothing of that. What does the group think about that? Any comments on that?
I also know he said so many different, he just changed his story on everything. He told us that he was kicked out of Tom Sam's house because of drugs, because Tom was stealing his pain pills. I don't know. It's just every time you turn around, it's a different story with Chris. When he was there, when he left.
He was also dealing drugs.
Who was Chris?
Where he was living at the time, Tom Sam's place. Tom was dealing in drugs. He didn't want the law to be around there because maybe some of his buyers would show up at the same time, and he didn't want him around there because of the situation. He was left there the second day after we found her remains.
Yeah, we were told he was kicked out, or we were told he left days after Judy was found.
Yeah,
out of Tom Sam's house.
I know where he went down the road on the other side of Meredith Manor. He wasn't there very long because the FBI supposedly was checking the party out where he was at the time.
A drug deal up on Meredith Manor.
Yes.
So, Mr. Petty, how many days you went to Tom Sam's? You know that Chris moved out 2 days later? You confirm that?
Yes, but pretty much by the neighbor.
By the neighbor said that? John Packer?
Yeah.
Yeah. They're supposed to talk to Tom Sam's, and they asked Tom Sam's 3 questions. They asked Packer 3 questions about Tom Sam's. Do you know what he's driving? Do you know where he's at? And the other question, I can't remember just what it was. But that was the 2 questions. He asked 3 questions, and that's all he asked.
So we possibly have Chris moving out at least 2 days after the fire.
Yes.
He's gone. That's interesting. So those are one of the things that, we found in the file that, it was at least the 19 days, Mr. Petty saying that, when he went talking or had heard that they were talking to Sam's, it was 2 days and Chris was already out of Sam's house at that point. I've spoken to Sam's. He doesn't remember specifics, the dates or how long until, Chris was no longer there. So I know it's been 14 years, but, it's hard to get that. I haven't seen it in the case file yet. Have you, Justin?
Mm-mm.
No. I do have in the file that just a statement that Sam's called the police and said that he was not going to come in for a polygraph.
Yeah. He lawyered up pretty quick.
Yep. Which he said was due to other things going on, which, makes sense.
He had access to a lot of drugs because he was on 100% disability because of his back. Of course, he could climb a tree and get up there and hunt and things like that and chop wood. I seen him chop wood, but he was 100% disabled. So there's some shady things goes on in this world.
Yes, there is. I agree.
A lot of stuff.
Absolutely right about that. All right. So now we move to February 27th. We have Kaplan, who was the medical examiner, spoke to Westfall and told Westfall he was ruling this a homicide. Westfall asked which evidence was needed to classify it as such, And Dr. Kaplan stated, due to the condition of the bones and the amount of damage caused by the fire. Hoping we get the ME report to figure out what he means by the condition of the bones. That was a big question that I personally had when I was reading through it. I'm like, why does he keep saying that? Like, he doesn't give any specific information. And then like later on in the case file, you can read where they kept calling the medical examiner's office trying to get why. I mean, they kept asking him, like, why are you ruling this a homicide? Like, what, on what grounds? And they just kept saying the condition of the bones. So I'm really curious to know what exactly they mean by that. Personally, that was one thing that stood out for me. Westfall did know the medical examiner ruling this a homicide. You know, he's based on his report.
Right.
So what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah. So a couple of things. I mean, I'd like to hear what Alan has to say about that too, in regards to the bones. And if there was anything that, you know, it's very vague in the reports about the condition of the bones and why he thinks it's a homicide. But, you know, I do want to say, I know in a previous episode, we mentioned that Westfall was shocked that this was ruled, you know, homicide, or that she was dead before the fire. But now we found in his reports, he was aware and he was asking why this was a homicide, because he didn't understand how they were ruling this a homicide. So I will say, and we said this in the previous episode, Westfall has had medical health problems. He kept saying his memory is not the best. So he would say, once you get the case file, you know, I'm happy to review with it. Maybe it'll jog my memory. So could it be that his memory, based on things he's going through? Could be. But at least now we know that Kaplan was deeming this a homicide back in February of 08. So, Alan, what do you think about the bones?
The only thing I can think of is on the bone part of it would be if they seen some kind of marks or something somewhere. They might have been from, say, knife marks or something like that might have been left. But as few of bones as what they had, I'm not 100% certain. I do know in the toxicology report that, you know, they found some liver tissue as well. There was no carbon monoxide there. You know, there was nothing in that. So I'm not a medical examiner. I mean, I know fire, and that's pretty much it. But I do know that upwards above 90% of fatalities in fires are caused from carbon monoxide and the fire gases and stuff. That, you know, if they die in a house fire, she didn't have that in her system. That's the immediate red flag that says she was dead before the fire started. I just can't buy accidental. I can't buy suicide. I can't buy, you know, any of that stuff, because it just does not make sense.
And we're going to talk about that as we get through, because we do have, you know, statements from Woodyard and others who believe this was accidental in the case file. So,
you know, when you investigate a fire, you want to rule out all the accidental stuff first, because if you go into this saying, well, you know, I'm going to investigate an arson fire, looking for arson, you're going to find a reason to call it arson. So I just can't see anything accidental when you got a body laying where it was laying, in the position that it was laying, and there's no carbon monoxide there. None of that makes sense. It just doesn't add up. And again, like I said a while ago when we were talking about the path, I go a lot on, I don't want to say gut feeling, but I go on stuff that makes sense. None of that makes sense to me that she died during the fire. It was a suicide. I don't buy it. You know, the suicide and then the fire started later. I don't believe that.
Jen said she popped into the chat. She said she 100% agrees with Alan on that. I do too.
It all just doesn't add up. So,
no.
Okay. So then, you know,
Westfall did speak with Woodyard, stating he only got the Parkersburg Police Department reports recently on August 14th. Westfall then was making contact to get medical examiner and fire reports. Woodyard and Westfall interview sisters Cheryl and Wanda and Marvin Petty. And then Woodyard made note, the ground condition was soft and would indeed provide false information as it pertains to boot size. Then Woodyard states that Chris came into the sheriff's office twice and per the examiner showed no signs of deception. And Chris admitted that he dropped Judy off at the gate in the area of the boot print. So where is the other footprints then if she did walk up that hill? There should have been some, whether they were big, small, indifferent, there should have been some. And we have the questions that were given to Chris. Like I said, I believe that was in the second episode after the initial family interview episode. He did come in twice willingly, but we don't have what he was asked the second time or
Correct.
the third time. We only have what was asked the first time.
Yep. And I have those questions. I found them, Justin. I can say them right now. So
yes, there were only three, right?
Yeah, there were only three. And the three questions again were, number one, did he drop Judy off at the bottom of the hill? Number two, did Judy look okay when she was dropped off? And number three, did you see Judy go up the hill? Those are the three questions that we know of. The first
and
one.
that was like I said, the first polygraph. So we don't know what was asked on the second or third as of right now. And Jen says the second question is very subjective, which is a very good point. It's very true.
Yeah. And, it says, did you see Judy go up the hill? And I believe he answered yes. But in my talking with him, he said he did not see her go up the hill. He just drove away and he didn't look back. So again, it's just interesting. And again, Jen says, what does okay mean? It means different for everyone. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So those were the three questions. And again, I find it interesting that they mention about the footprint. I think this came in, Mr. Petty, when it says like when you showed them the footprint that you had mentioned, you had found a footprint, that you had taken a photo of it using a yardstick to show. And Woodyard made the comment in here that it would be hard to get an accurate boot size based on the conditions of the ground at that point.
It was a pretty plain track. It was well printed in. Reason why I drove from the bottom of the hill up to the top. That's mainly, I found a footprint at the bottom, only it was pretty mucky. I didn't try to take any pictures of it before they went through the gate. Then I drove to the top of the hill and got out. And that's when I found the footprint afterwards. So all that distance in between there could have been several prints.
When did you make it all the way up the hill?
I drove up to the top of the hill on the day of the fire.
You made it all the way up?
It was still burning when I got there, about 2 feet tall. The flames were in the middle of the house.
Hey, Mr. Petty.
Pardon?
Mr. Petty?
Yeah?
Do you know what time it was that you drove up there and you found the fire?
No, I know it was daylight. That's all.
Was it really pretty early, say 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, or?
I can't remember everything.
Okay.
It's just.
I will say this. That time
I think it's 9:30.
Yeah, that time of year in that area, the sun's not going to come up till 7:38. So,
right. So
I do know, like if it was daylight, it was probably past 8 o'clock.
I'm just asking because I can kind of put a little bit of a time frame. Knowing what I know about the fire, I can kind of backtrace the time a little bit and get close to the time that it was started. I'm not saying it'll be 100%, but it'll be plus or minus, a little bit. I can kind of figure that out.
Yeah, it was about 9:30, I think, Alan, that I'm seeing in reports of it, like called in.
Moving forward in September, and this is September 18th of later that year, Woodyard contacted the state medical examiner's office asking for reports or photographs related to this incident. One question they have left unanswered per Woodyard: was there enough liver recovered for the tissue to obtain a blood gas? Woodyard was told yes, that enough was obtained to determine the content of prescribed drugs in the victim's system. So given the information and knowing the medical examiner ruled it a homicide due to lack of carbon monoxide in her tissue, Woodyard wrote, "At this time in the investigation and with the evidence at hand, there is no good proof that exists which would indicate anything other than an accidental fire which caused the death of Miss Petty. It would be my recommendation that this file remain open inactive status." Melissa put a point in here that says, did he not read that her level for C2 was way below what it should have been? You can't set an accidental fire and die before the fire starts. How does this make any sense whatsoever? And then giving it an open inactive status after the medical examiner has told him numerous times this is a homicide. It needs to be you can read it in the report. It literally says this is a suspicious death and needs to be investigated further. But yet we have Woodyard who writes the exact opposite.
Yeah, I found that statement. Well, and I will say this too. There's 3 pages to this, and we have page 3 of 3. I don't know where page 1 and 2 are. Maybe they're on their way. Maybe I misorganized things. So maybe there's more to explain this. But based on everything we talked about last week with Jennifer, and we went through these different suicide, accidental, natural, I just find it like incomprehensible that you have someone who says, well, maybe this is accidental. Well, how the hell are you going to start a fire if you're already dead because she has no carbon monoxide? I mean, Alan, is this ludicrous? What's your thoughts?
Well, I said it a while ago. I mean, it don't make a lot of sense. I've never seen somebody do that had no carbon monoxide or whatever in their system that died from a fire. They're going to have large amounts of it. They're going to have, and it's not just carbon monoxide that's there. There are several other gases. You've got hydrogen cyanide that's put off. You've got, the list goes on and on and on. They didn't find any of it. I mean, there was nothing there. Plus the position on where they found her bones and stuff, the way the body was found and where it was found, and it doesn't make sense. And again, I got to go on what makes sense. Ask the Petty family, was she known to go in there? Would she have gone into that cellar never early in the morning, 2 or 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning? Would she have gone in there for that? Would she have even gone to the farm for him? I don't know. The suicide accidental thing, I don't buy it. I really don't.
Right. And that's what we've said too, from the get-go, and the more evidence we get to support this. So at some point along the way, I believe it got changed from homicide to undetermined.
Jen just came into the chat and said sunrise on February 7th, 2008 was right at about 7:30 a.m. So that does help the time frame a little bit for you.
All right. So I think that wraps up at least the first session of the case file. We have a lot more to go through. There's a lot of things here that we've gotten so far. We've got the canine reports. We have some other evidence. I'm hoping that we can get some more. I've asked Doug for photographs and things like that so we can see the remains. I know, Alan, you were wondering about that with how much stuff was, and Justin too, how much stuff was on her that can tell us a little bit more. And we're hoping to get that. So thank you all for joining. We hope this was fun. All of our group was like so quiet, but we appreciate you at least, joining and listening. And I hope this was good for you. And Mom and Mr. and Mrs. Petty, you have anything you want to say to the group?
I want to thank all of you for everything you're doing.
We're trying.
I know it wasn't an accident. I appreciate everything, and I enjoy listening to this to know what's going on, because we've been not being told nothing for all these years.
And I am so sorry for that.
It was a bollocks tape, bollocks up to start with, and it was never tried to be correct. And and now I told my wife that it'll never be solved without some other ones involved in it, because our police department's not going to do anything. They've finished with it, and it was files. We just lay there till they rot because nothing's going to be done. So I said, we'll never get her solved.
We're hoping to change that.
And we're happy.
Alan as well, thank you for joining us.
Oh, I was going to say thank you to Alan, too, because I didn't get a chance to before. But thank you for all you're doing to help us. It's like Mom and Dad said, from day one, Sheriff Meredith is the original sheriff that was the one that was running the case. He said it was a homicide. He knew it was, but politics got to play into it. And I think the only way I can answer that is politics where everybody messed up. So they just wanted us to go away. They wanted to cover it up. They wanted us to move on. I spent 14 years making every phone call. And every time I did, you can just tell they just was annoyed by me because I wouldn't go away. They just wanted it to be pushed to the side and just go next,
I will say this, is that Doug has been very helpful in giving us what we've asked for. And also he's on board of saying, listen, there were mistakes that were made back in 08, 09, but we can correct them. I mean, there's never a bad time to go ahead and say, well, let's take a look at this, and things weren't done then. Okay, but we can do them now. Right. So right. I think that is awesome. And I think that's what we need. And, to Mr. and Mrs. Petty, we are here for you, as I've said so much before, and we've made so much progress. And our hope and our goal is that we will find who murdered Judy this year in 2023.
There's something about the fire always bothered me, is because the distance from the building to the house is a greater distance than from the house to the garage. And there was a truck in between there. The truck burned up and the garage wasn't touched, which was a lot shorter distance. So it had to be at least 2 set fires from the building and the house. Had to be set separate, or the garage would have been burnt down too.
How far was the garage from there again?
Not very far, and it wasn't very far from the truck.
And the truck was destroyed.
It had gasoline in it and oil, and had a lot of fire from it. But the garage wasn't touched. There wasn't a scorch board or nothing on it. I just couldn't understand it.
And I think too, it depends on, I'll have to relook at the photos as like the wind and all of that, where the direction going. And that might have been maybe why, I don't know, Alan, you could probably answer this more than me as to things that might have blown, or ashes, or things based on the wind direction and where things were.
I'm going to have to look at the pictures again. I didn't realize that there was a garage that was that close, or that, that far from the house, but I'll look at it again and see if I can come up with an idea. It would, the wind, definitely, depending on how windy it was and all that. The fire is one of those things that it's going to do something different every time. I mean, you can't. And me coming in 14, 15 years later and not being there at the time that it was found and all that, it's really kind of hard to.
Yeah, the stuff is moved around and everything.
Yeah, and that's something else too. That, I mean, I don't want to sit here and say somebody done something wrong, because technology and the way things are investigated are different now than they were then, and and I just, without coming out and saying somebody really messed up, I'm not going to say that. I don't know, but I will take a look at it all again. I've got all the photographs and the pictures and stuff. I can do some measuring on the computer and all that, and kind of see where it's at, how far it is. And I know, it was a 2-story house, right?
Yes.
That thing's going to put off a lot of heat. I mean, when it gets fully involved, it's going to put off a lot of heat. What scorched and burnt the truck, I don't know, but you would think if the truck was between it and the garage, it should have scorched the garage too. So
that's what I couldn't understand, because it burnt the truck up. It was at the corner of the house, backed in toward the house.
Yeah. And
then not too many feet over to the garage. The garage wasn't touched. It was hard for me to understand.
I'll definitely look at it. I mean, that's for sure. I'll look at it some more closer. I was kind of looking, whenever I first looked at it, I was looking at where her body was and the relation to the house and all that stuff. So I'll go back and take a look at the truck closer. for sure and see what I can come up with there.
Hey, Alan, I think I know what Dad's trying to say is where they were trying to say that the wind caused this to catch fire and then this to catch fire and that to catch fire. What we were saying is if that would have been the case, then the truck would have, if the wind was still going the same direction, it would have definitely caught the garage on fire too.
Okay.
So saying is there's definitely two set fires. One, we all believe, is where Judy's remains were found, and then the house afterwards.
Right.
But he just wants to, I think Dad's trying to say it has nothing to do with the wind, because it would have continued and got the garage on fire and then the barn on fire, that it was just a set total fire.
Yeah, you would think.
Thank you for saying that, Mr. Petty. And Alan will definitely take a look at it and see what, he thinks and look at that whole possibility. So we will wrap this up. Before we do, anybody, if you want to smile, and we'll take a photo and we'll post it. And then, this episode will be on this week, so you can listen, share it. And, probably next week we have more of the case file. We'll probably just, do that ourselves. Sue turned off her camera. She's like, I don't want to be in the video, a photo. That's okay, Sue. And then we can, go over more of the case file and more questions. So more to happen. We'll be in Parkersburg. We'll be back in February, the first week in February. So we're going to plan a get together for anybody in Parkersburg who wants to come out and meet us and get your shirts, right? We got our shirts. Mom and Dad got their shirts on. Yay! And a big hug. I can't wait. And so we're excited about that. So, all right. So thank you so much for joining this episode of Safe Haven. Anything else, Justin?
No, I just, again, want to thank everybody for joining us, especially the Petty family, for taking time out of their Sunday and, answering questions for us and talking with Alan directly. And again, Alan, thank you for joining us as well. And Jen too. She was in the chat area, but she still contributed quite a bit. We appreciate everybody just joining us and taking the time on a Sunday. Yeah, it's first live episode for Zoom. We can plan more in the future. We still have a lot of stuff to go through and a lot of stuff to get, but hopefully we get the rest of it soon.
And I think we've made good headway. We're seeing a lot of inconsistencies and things. We have a lot more questions, which is only going to continue. And, I've been talking with a lot of different people, sources who are confirming things. I'm reaching out to more and more people, and continue to follow us on Facebook. And, feel free to leave an anonymous phone call or private message us, private message one of us, and you can stay anonymous. But we are definitely making a lot of headway, and hopefully with Doug's help and Alan and everyone on the team, that we will find justice this year. And so Mr. and Mrs. Petty over there, we're not stopping.
Right.
I'm not.
Right. Hell no.
That's right.
Yes. Oh.
I would just like to say to the Pettys, God bless you, and hopefully we get somebody convicted this year.
Oh, Carolyn, we love you.
You're in our prayers.
Thank you.
All right. Well, until next time.
See you guys later.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Love you all.
Love you guys too. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.